you guys share a common success story. On the one hand, UnternehmerTUM is recognized as one of the leading innovation hubs in Europe, and Celonis is one of the unicorns that has been born in this setup. So congratulations on that, and I'm going to start with the first question of the community. What is the secret sauce of UnternehmerTUM to really promote that startup foundation?
Mm-hmm. So when we maybe stay in the cooking metaphor, so I think it's first about the ingredients and then about having the right cook. Mm-hmm. So the ingredients are first of all people. So you need to have smart people, talents from universities such as TUM or others. The second is, especially in the B2B startup sector, it's big companies, corporates that are actually looking for startups to have them as a customer. And then the third one is you need to have money. So there need to be a vibrant VC scene around. And the fourth thing is also to really collaborate with governments, with cities, and so on.
Mm-hmm. So these were the ingredients?
These were the ingredients, and now about the cooks. It's all about doing things. Networking is great, but you really need to make things happen. That's why at UnternehmerTUM we have various programs. And there, like we heard it before, it's about autonomous teams. Mm-hmm. It's about empowering teams, having people that come from the industry and are entrepreneurs themselves.
Maybe, Fabian, you can jump right into it and tell us how it was the setup for Celonis at the very beginning. Like, how did you get started? What kind of support did you have? What could you really leverage to promote the crazy success that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we have had an amazing opportunity to build such a company offering B2B software in the space of process mining. And yeah, actually in the early phases, we were supported by the ecosystem in Munich. So founded out of
into the incubator?
No, so we were basically like consulted for the founding of the company. And I think it's just a great place. Technical University of Munich is like fostering this entrepreneurial spirit. And yeah, from there, we had great talent available for the company to build on. And then funded by European venture capital scene later on allowed us to expand and really grow internationally.
Mm-hmm. So where is Celonis right now? Like, what kind of markets did you already roll out? So
especially over the last 12 to 18 months, I would say we've internationalized quite a bit. We've been in the US since 2016, but over the last year, we've grown to 300 employees there and like a significant market for us now with offices in San Francisco, New York, and also Raleigh. But also in Europe, we've grown tremendously. We've opened a new office in Paris, another one in Madrid, where we now also have our chief revenue officer sitting, growing our international markets. And we've also expanded into Japan already.
Looking at the European market, is that a challenge that we have so many different countries with different tech guidelines, etc.?
So to start off, it's probably a little bit more challenging because the market is not as homogeneous as you know it from the US. So that's probably a challenge. But on the other hand, like there's great talent available. There's tremendous support from universities such as the one in Munich. And I think we see this trend of more and more startups in Europe and more funding also in terms of venture capital. And so I think the entrepreneurial spirit and the startup scene is kind of expanding, and that's great to see. Yeah. I don't know how you see it from your perspective then.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we are on the right track, and now it's about scaling, like it's with startups. So we kind of found the way to operate in this sector, but it's really now the time to collaborate and to invest in the startup ecosystem, because what we see, for example, in Asia and also in the US is we can't outperform in terms of people or also in terms of investment. You have to be more collaborative and just be clever. Yeah.
So I'm just checking some questions here. But before I get into that, maybe one clarification when we now talk about the European setup and innovation hubs. If we compare the success of different setups, what are the KPIs we're actually looking at?
I mean, first of all, it's really about the positive impact to society. So, for example, Celonis is a great example. Like, Celonis is generating jobs, is actually providing a really great product. So this is most important. And then when you look at KPIs, it's about how many investment rounds and what's the amount of investment into a startup. It's about how many startups do you have in a certain industry, so for example, fintech or mobility. It's also about how international are those startups. So how, when you compare, for example, a startup landscape, like in the AI space, how many out of those do we have in Germany, actually? And when we look at all those numbers, we still have a big job together to do.
If we're looking at startup intensity regarding founding, where can we see the most prosperous innovation hubs in Europe right now?
So it's still London, even though with Brexit, especially in the AI space, London is still very successful. But we also see large investments in Paris, in France. Especially in France, the France government really helped to grow the startup ecosystem. Besides, the Nordics are very successful, especially in e-government solutions. But still, in Germany, we are not bad. Berlin is really good, and also Munich is starting with a high pace.
But for example, you made the comparison to France, where you said the government is really pushing startup innovation. Like, what would be needed in Germany? What would you wish for? If we had Merkel watching us right now, what would you be asking for?
I mean, me as an employee of UnternehmerTUM, I think we need actually more UnternehmerTUMs in Germany. So we always try actually to help others to build those entrepreneurship centers, because we see it's working. So we see a high number of startups coming out of our ecosystem. Now we need to replicate it. And so when we look at UnternehmerTUM, it's a university, but it's also family offices, it's industrial families helping, and it's also the government helping. So it's really working together. It's a big challenge.
So, but why can't we just copy-paste the UnternehmerTUM model?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, we ask actually ourselves this all the time, but it's you have to be very open and you have to take risks. So, for example, a university has to be open to work with an entrepreneurship center. So everybody needs to get this experience. It's very hard to predict how it will end up. And in Germany, we are typically more on the conservative side. So that's what we need to change.
That resonates with another question that I have. There is a prejudice that Europe and Germany, they don't have that entrepreneurial spirit. And we had it before in the discussion with Niels, that he elaborated on that as well. I mean, you guys are the perfect example that there is a lot of entrepreneurial spirit and you can actually be successful. But how is your experience with that prejudice?
Oh, I would say there's actually a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, and I think we even find within our organization a lot of people that have a very entrepreneurial mindset. It probably took a little bit of the spark for this whole area of startups to kind of grow, and I think we now see that trend. And if we think about it, probably 10 years back or so, there was just not that much of like this idea of startups around, and so there was a lot less people going into that direction. But I think we have more and more of the framework available. And I think in the end, it all comes down to great talent and great education. And you can see that across Europe. And even like you mentioned it earlier, there is many hubs already today, but we also see it more and more that there is great talent, especially in the tech area in Eastern Europe as well. We recently, for instance, also acquired a company from the Czech Republic, which is kind of adding to our product portfolio. They have a tremendous product. It's all about automation, online automation. And you see more and more of these products coming out of Eastern Europe as well. So I think the startup scene across Europe is growing.